Greetings adventurers, Frost here, and today I want to make my guide for Fire Mage parsing in ahn'qiraj. Now, my mage no longer is the main raid, or inside our main raid, so my parses aren't quite as high as they were in BWL, but I still get enough knowledge from raiding in group 2 to be able to know how to parse pretty well, right? So let's go ahead and skip forward to Scarum. Also, here's a list of all your consumables you want to use for Fire Mage. It's only a few more added ones since Phase 5, and there's no reason to go over all of them. So now for Scarum. Basically, the main thing for Scarum is you want to try and get off as many casts as you possibly can, because what you'll notice is a lot of the time is the boss will despawn before you finish casting Fireball. Right now, right there, you just saw my Fireball not go off because the boss swapped or did the split. So it despawned, or it went away for a second. I detargeted, right? So basically, your goal is when the split first goes off, get a couple fireballs off, and then swap to scorches, and then when it's getting really low, then hit your fire blast, right? And then maybe swap targets if there's a higher health one. Now there's two spots you can choose to position. You can either position where I am now, kind of like at the top of the stairs, where I can hit 2 of them fairly easy, and I don't really need to change my direction. Or you can sit down in the center, and then you have to kind of point your character depending on which way there's the highest health mob, and then you can get more fireballs off that way. And then you definitely want to be using MQG for this, and an arcane protection potion to reduce your knockback, and then the MQG makes it so you can get fireballs off more, because when you have MQG up, you essentially just spam fireball and then throw in like a fire blast if you're not going to be able to fit in a fireball anywhere, because fireball is almost down to Scorch's casting speed, and you don't want to cast a Scorch with MQG. So Scarum's pretty simple. Just get off as many casts as you can. You don't have to worry about Ignite or Scorch stacks or any of that, because the bosses despawn too fast to worry about that. So next up is Bug Trio. And for Bug Trio, oh yeah, obviously, basically just pop your Combustion with your MQG and with your PI. Pop all your cooldowns at the same time on Scarum also. Now for Bug Trio, the kill order doesn't matter for mages. Also, the adds do not count towards your parse. So if you're just solely going for a parse, I mean, let the rest of the raid kill the adds, right? It's kind of a scummy thing to do, but if you're like cheesing parses, that's what it is, right? You're like not really playing for the raid anymore, you're playing for yourself. The other thing is you want to have a fear ward on this, because there's an AoE fear, or Will of the Forsaken is also really good, obviously. And then you want to have a nature protection potion so you don't get knockbacks from the volley. And then you can use elixirs of poison resistance, because they don't cause a global or anything. And then you're doing your standard rotation of putting up 5 stacks of Scorch, and then you're fireballing after there's 5 stacks of Scorch up. And then obviously you want to, same thing, like the best scenario is to go in once there's 5 stacks of Scorch on your first target. That's when you pop MQG and your Combustion and your PI and everything. You can also do it on the second or third ad when it spawns, preferably not the third ad, at least the second, because most likely you'll blow through them too fast and you won't quite use all of your cooldowns. And then obviously number of mages does kind of play into it, because of the way Ignite splitting works, where the Ignite's just evenly split amongst the number of mages, right? So Ignite's damage caps at a certain point because it can only stack up to 5. So if your mages are playing really well, technically, if 3 mages can keep up 5 stacks of Ignite perfectly, they will do more DPS than 6 mages keeping up 5 stacks of Ignite perfectly. Now, 3 mages is an extreme, probably too low. I think the sweet spot is 4 or 5 mages if you're looking for like a really, really good mage parse setup. And then you're also looking at using Arcanite Dragonlings if you really want to like go ham in terms of a mage parse, but you're going to need to get your melee to use them for you, because you need to get really close to the boss for them to start attacking. So it's not really realistic for you to use it yourself. But let's move on to Sartura. Oh, one more thing I should mention about Combustion before we go on to Sartura is, and this is really important for Scarum, Combustion works like, what's it called? Master of Elements? Or I forget the name of the talent. It's the one for Shaman where you can batch the Combustion stacks, right? So Combustion guarantees you 3 crits. Now, after you get 2 crits, you... on the third one, you can get 2 crits out of the third crit. So you can get 4 guaranteed crits out of Combustion if at the end of your, or on your, after you get 2 crits, you start casting a fireball, and then you'll have like 6 stacks of Combustion. So once that fireball goes off, you Fire Blast, and both that Fire Blast and the fireball will have the Combustion applied to it. So you can actually get extra use out of your Combustion by using Fire Blast, but you only want to do this if you're in range of a mob with your Fire Blast. You don't want to actually like stop casting to be able to get the Fire Blast off. But on Scarum, you can usually do that because you're in range, so it's a very nice DPS boost that you can get from that. But then for Sartura, you want to start out by throwing down a couple Flame Strike, and then you either can blink in, you can do the risky blink in, Blast Wave Sapper, and that will be more DPS, but if you get knocked back like this, you lose DPS, right? So if the ads get stunned properly, like they should, then you'll be good, and you'll do more damage by getting the Blast Wave Sapper. However, remember, you won't have one for Viscidus, so this is another greedy play, technically. Unless you guys just wait for your sappers if you're not speedrunning or whatever. And then after that, 5 stacks of Scorch on Sartura, pop your Combustion, pop your PI, pop your MQG, and go ham on Sartura. And that's the end of that boss fight. Also, lips are big for Sartura, right? If she comes on top of you and starts spinning, then you can just lip it and keep casting instead of having to waste a global on blinking away or moving to be able to avoid that damage. So having a lip cooldown for Sartura is also big. Bug hallway, one thing to note if you're speedrunning, Blade of Eternal Darkness is really, really good for this hallway. Now, Fankris, simplest boss in the dungeon. Single target boss. Ads do not count towards your parse. So if you're looking to parse, you literally are just single targeting the boss. 5 stacks of Scorch, pop your Combustion, pop your PI, pop your MQG, go ham. And I wouldn't, like, none of these bosses so far are long enough to justify rotating your Combustion. The only boss you really rotate your Combustion on is Twin Emps, and all you do is you say, these mages combust on this teleport, these mages combust on this teleport, these mages combust on this teleport. So it's a pretty straightforward setup that you do in terms of Combustion rotations, because the boss fights just aren't long enough for you to really want to rotate them or for it to matter. So yeah, Fankris, simple boss. Hope you get crits. Viscidus does not count towards parsing. I'll mention it, just say that you want to have a fast frost damage wand, do AoE on the slimes, right? Arcane Explosion, Cone of Cold, etc. When they get close, Blast Wave Sapper. Simple boss, doesn't matter actually. Then next up we have Princess Huhuran. That is another rather simple boss fight, pretty much exactly like Fankris. The only difference is there are poison volleys that go out, so you want to have a pre-pot nature protection potion to reduce knockback. But yeah, all your cooldowns all at the same time right after the Scorch stacks are up. Now, if you're speedrunning, you're not always going to have MQG, because MQG is your #1 trinket, right? You'll be running Nelth's Tear, MQG as your 2 main trinkets whenever those are up for bosses. If your MQG is not up, next up you will want to use Toep, because ZHC has, when Ignite gets applied, it takes 2 stacks away from ZHC, and the Ignite does not benefit from the spell power on ZHC. So ZHC is just kind of chalked, it's just there to use as filler in trash when your Toep is on cooldown. So yeah, Scorch, spam fireballs with Combustion and MQG. I fucked up right there. And then I got poisoned. That's another thing is your Bis Parse on Hoo-Hoo, you kind of have to pray that you don't get Wyvern Stung. If you do get Wyvern Stung, it can be saved if it gets cleansed. But yeah. So just pray that you get to cast the whole time on Hoo-Hoo, basically, and you'll get a good Parse. Then also note for speedruns, use your cooldowns on these guys. They take forever, and they fucking have a lot of health. It's, yeah, doing extra damage to them is very good. Now, Twins is perhaps the most interesting one. It's the only one that has, like, real variation in terms of parsing on. You need to make sure you don't rip aggro, obviously, off of your Warlocks. I think you still run MQG. You could make the argument for Toep because you get 2 uses out of it, but I think MQG in combination with PI, it puts it over the top to be better than even 2 Toep uses. Also, and if you're not getting PI, then it makes it a little bit closer, I guess, and then what you can do is just use MQG on the Guardians, and if it's backup for Twins, use it there. It's like, it'll be a minimal difference between the two, honestly. So yeah, we also don't move. So like, this is what you would want ideally for your ranged is when we pull this boss, our Warlock doesn't move it from this initial position right here because it's too much of a pain in the ass. It's too much of a DPS loss to have the Warlock move the boss. Now, one other thing that you can lose DPS to is having to move for bugs right there, right? So what you can notice is there's no bugs on these stairs right here. So you can actually go to the stairs and stand on the stairs, and you will know that you won't ever have to move for a bug. The only bad thing is you have to move farther. So it's more of a DPS loss in terms of having more movement between the bosses. But the biggest DPS gain for Twins is the transition timing, right? So you need to move early enough that you're no longer having an ignite on the boss, so that so we start moving here, the ignite goes down, it drops off the boss, and then ideally you want the teleport to go off right now so that you can start DPSing right when you get in range. Here we went a little bit too early, and we had to sit here and we had some downtime, right? So like that variation is the biggest change in your DPS on Twins, is how little downtime you have during the transition. Mages don't really, it doesn't really matter where the boss is positioned for your Parse, because blink basically brings you into fireball range from across the room, right? So the positioning is very minimal, and it's still the same thing. Don't pop your cooldown, so there's 5 stacks of Scorches. Ideally, you never have Scorch fall off on Twins because you can restack the Scorch right before you transition back over to the other side, so that like you're not losing any fireball casts to Scorch, and then just use your Combustion and PI and MQG on your assigned teleport. And yeah, pray for the best. It's the longest fight, so it's the least RNG involved, the most heavily dependent on your gear and your gameplay in terms of your Parse. Also, on your raid, right? Because like if you're using MQG, for example, the faster your Twins kill, then the way better your Parse, right? As we, like on DMF weeks, I would definitely recommend MQG over Toep. I mean, some people may even get to the point where you can't use 2 Toeps inside the fight, and then it's like definitely not worth, right? Like we're already like verging that point. So then the next boss, Oro, I'll just skip ahead because this trash takes a minute. We actually just run past most of it. Now, we do a slightly different strat for Aura. We have our mages tank the sandblasts, so we actually lose some DPS. You would get more DPS on Aura if you weren't doing this. However, it's a minimal DPS loss. And basic Oro is basically exactly the same. Scorches up to 5, and then you're spamming Fireball. There is one thing that you can note. You can FAP the Sandblast, so you can intentionally get hit by Sandblast. After you use FAP, it won't stun you, and then you will drop all of your threat, and then you won't have to worry about pulling threat if you are standing inside the standard ranged group over here. We try to have our mages beat our tanks on threat so that we can eat the Sandblasts. I think we fucked up this week right here because we accidentally dropped the Ignite, and we actually changed our strat inside of our main raid so that we would have only one mage go out that has the Ignite, and all the other mages are just spamming Scorch to just permanently keep that Ignite up, because Scorch spam to keep up a 5-stack Ignite is actually a really small DPS loss compared to having 5 stacks of Scorch and then Fireball spamming, because of like the RNG of like dropping Ignite and stuff like that. But yeah, we're basically the same thing. Pray for huge, or try and get that huge Ignite stack via all your mages using PI right after the Scorch is up, so that you get 5 huge Fireball crits to be your Ignite stack, and then you're rolling it for the rest of the fight. Now, Cthulhu is also slightly different because there's a combat drop between the phase transitions. So you're pumping during phase 1. I usually just use MQG during phase 1 because you're getting to free cast and stand there the whole time, and you get guaranteed use out of it. And then also, obviously, you I guess having the closer side to the room, you might get a slightly better parse if you start casting early, but at this point I think most raid groups aren't starting to hit the boss until everyone's in position anyways, so that's kind of like irrelevant. And then yeah, I mean, it's the same thing, 5 stacks of Scorch, try and get PI with MQG and get huge Ignite stacks. The tentacles kind of fucked me here, having 2 spawn where I was supposed to be standing, so I had to kill them during my MQG and PI, which really sucked. And the tentacles are included inside the Cthulhu Parse, I believe. Let me double check that before I say for sure. I think it's the only ad inside the instance that is included. Yes, it is. Okay, so yeah, all the tentacles in Cthulhu are included in your boss parse. So there are a couple ways that you can actually cheese this, right? So phase 1, self-explanatory, you're doing as much damage as you can, whatever. Phase 2, if you get sent down into the stomach immediately, if you're the first to get sent down into the stomach and you stay down in the stomach the whole time, well, now you're getting to DPS from the very start of the fight through phase 1 all the way through phase 2 till the tentacles go down, because at this point you don't come up until the tentacles die, right? Like, you just don't come up until the tentacles die, and you pray that a healer comes up. I guess if you're solo and you're parsing, then you can come up if you're going to die, but like realistically it's pretty easy to survive down there until they're dead, especially if you're popping everything. So then you'll come up, you get sent up after the tentacles die, and then you get to immediately start DPS spamming on phase 3. Now, I forgot to mention right here, after we kill the first guy, that's when the combat drop is, and that allows you, after we go from phase 1 to phase 2, you drop combat, and that allows you to trinket swap. So you can queue up a trinket right here when the boss is at like 20% HP, and when it transitions between the phases, as long as all these claw tentacles are dead and all these eye mind flayer things are dead, then you'll drop combat and you can get a trinket swap. So you can use MQG, swap over, get your toe up, and then use toe up right when it comes back up off cooldown. And that's a big DPS boost there, obviously, too. And then, like I said, you're praying to get sent down. If you don't get sent down, you can still get a good parse by being the one to DPS the eye tentacles around the boss. So if you only assign like a couple people to DPS those tentacles around the boss, they'll actually also get a really good parse, right? Because they're getting to DPS the entire time, while the other people are just kind of fucking sitting there hitting Seathune for like 2, 3 damage, 4 damage, while you're going around and killing all the mind flaying tentacles doing full damage. So yeah. And then here you can see I got sent down early, and the healer tried to tell me, yo, go up, you have 9 stacks. And I said, no, I'm not going up, just heal me and finish the tentacle. And then here you can see I finished the tentacle and got sent up immediately. He got the heal off right before, thank you, because I probably would have died. And it was perfect. Right? That's what you want to do, ideally, for a fast kill on Seathune. You don't send anyone up ever, you just kill them. And then here you can see, bam, you're already on there. Ideally, I probably would have needed an innervate here. I should have like asked for an innervate, because as you can see, all the other mages are full mana. I have no mana because I was the only one that was DPSing the whole time. So that's where you get that power parse as a mage on Seathune. But yeah, that's it for my guide on how to parse inside 8Q as a mage. I hope it helped. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you all in Azeroth.